Professor Townsend, how do you think a corporate social responsibility approach will benefit employees in 2027?
It's going to take a long time to explore the senses in which companies have to behave like public services. That's really the fundamental question, because we've gone through a process in the last 150 years, first of all, of companies in nation states beginning to come to terms with their responsibilities, both to their workers and to the outside community of both consumers and members of the nation state. And in the meantime, and especially in the last 40 years, we've seen a movement in the development of economics which has begun to question the responsibility of companies in managing both workers and the impact on the outside community. So we've had a short history only of the development of investigations of transnational corporations. They have grown in scale. They have multiple activities extending sometimes to 60, 70 or 80 countries. The problem is them admitting responsibility for subcontracted labour in distant countries, and even accepting responsibility for their own directly employed staff. So we've got an internal process going on of research into labour relations and labour conditions within the corporate sector. And frankly, we have too few reports of a regular scale explaining what are the wages, what are the conditions of work, what are the conditions under which people's work is terminated, whether unions are acceptable or not, etc., etc. And it's almost a desert in terms of establishing the scenery of global responsibility. That's the first and most essential point. In response to some not very penetrating criticisms, both the OECD, now with 30 member countries, and the International Labour Office have set up what they call guidelines on corporate social responsibility. These are observed up to a point by some of the more considerate and socially oriented corporations, but they are ignored by others. At one extreme we have, in a country like the United Kingdom, the John Lewis Partnership, who to all accounts seem to be fairly supportive of good employee-employer relationships, and have very much they're very much aware of both competitive rules, but also they're aware of some of their social responsibilities of the needs and rights of consumers, but also of people who enter the building or who are receiving goods or services which may not always be perfect. So we have at one extreme in corporations fairly well managed business. But at the other extreme we have companies like, and we've had the extreme cases in recent years of the crash of Enron and WorldCom, Hollinger International. Even today, I understand that Conrad Black of Hollinger International is trying to deny the allegations that he filtered away $32 million of Hollinger International into his own and his wife's pockets. So we've got these two extremes of current corporate behaviour. We need to know a lot more about the range of, let us say, social responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
We have the two extremes of corporate behaviour, and it matters enormously because either we face a future where bad behaviour grows in scale and people are exploited and human rights are virtually ignored, or we have the spread of decent behaviour by business in which people's conditions and their minimal rights to a hearing and to an adequate standard of living and decent treatment in health and education, etc., that is recognised and supported. We have therefore two alternatives, two extreme alternatives. There are positions in the middle, I know. At one extreme, we can argue that providing a lot of attention is given to the guidelines for corporate social responsibility, then companies themselves can expect to grow in, well, public influence. They can begin taking over certain activities which previously have been thought to belong only to democratically elected public bodies who have to regulate or have to own or have to provide some of the basic social services. On the other hand, we've got the extreme of saying, well, voluntary codes of behaviour are not likely to make very much headway. They're important because at least they convey to business leaders what others expect of them, even if they have very little time to reflect on those things. The contrary argument, which derives a lot from 19th century history in Europe and North America, is that voluntary codes of conduct are of limited value and consequence, and sooner or later we have to recognise that it would be best to revise national company law and to try and spread regional law either in Europe or North and South America, South Asia, or even to reach a position of international company law where there are particular rights and responsibilities placed on all business companies or corporations. I tend to take that position, but for the life of me, I can't see that happening for 20, 50, even 100 years. There are real difficulties of harmonising national law